Hey friends, welcome back to Nope, We're Not Monogamous. The podcast where we explore non-monogamy with, some nuance and curiosity and a little bit of humor. I'm Alicia, your non-monogamous relationship coach, and today's episode is such a treat. I'm joined by Dr. Emma Smith, and I just recently discovered her work. But the moment I did, I was like, how have I not known about her before? Her approach to desire and emotional safety and boundaries resonates so deeply with the way that I work, and I knew immediately I had to have her on the show. Emma is a licensed professional counselor, a certified sex therapist, and a brilliant thinker when it comes to relationships, especially the ones that don't follow the traditional script. So in this conversation, we get into how to understand your boundaries through your body. You'll see what I mean. How to regulate when your nervous system is completely freaking out, and why jealousy might actually be one of your greatest teachers. You've probably heard me mention this before, but we're talking about it again because it's so important. If you've ever struggled to say no, if you've felt guilty for setting limits, or if you wondered if you're even doing this whole non-monogamy thing right, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Enjoy. Awesome. Well, amazing. Welcome. Thank you for coming on Nope, We're Not Monogamous. I appreciate you being here. Would you tell the listeners just real quick kind of who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Emma Smith, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and certified sex therapist practicing in Nashville, Tennessee.
Amazing. Oh, you're in Tennessee. Oh, cool. You're like, it must be
Yeah.
warm there right now, I would imagine.
We are in that weird flux where you are going to be dressed inappropriately for the weather at some point,
No matter what.
no matter what.
Amazing. I'm in Washington state, so I'm like just outside of Seattle, and it's the same thing. It's like last week it was hailing, and now it's beautiful and sunny. So
Yes. I just put away all my sweaters, and then the temperature dropped again, and I was like, well, okay, we're going in layers today.
yep. Amazing. So this morning I was checking out your website and your social media, and you have so much really amazing content. I got like really excited to do this. I was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be so good." Uh and I have I have a couple of questions for you. I obviously
Mhm.
talk a lot about non-monogamy here, but what I've found is that it's all just good relationship advice, right?
Yes.
Across the board. And something I was really excited to talk to you about in the realm of non-monogamy is boundaries, because that is such a huge topic and such a hard topic for so many people. So many of us, one, have no idea what our boundaries are, two, have no idea how to set them without feeling guilty or weird or like we're doing something wrong. And so I really was excited to ask you about your thoughts on boundaries and how you help people figure out what the heck they even are.
Yeah, that's such a great question because you're right. It is something that extends beyond ethical non-monogamy or anything like that. So, for me, boundaries are really about relationship agreements,
Yeah.
right? And they're about care, they're about safety, they are about being grounded in your love and respect for another person, right? And so I really do believe that when we have good boundaries, we get to show up as the best version of ourselves in our relationships because we're not worried about protecting ourselves from our partners, right? Like if things are just kind of out there and it's like, hey, you already know there's no guessing, then it can be easier to kind of have those real and authentic interactions and conversations and all across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. But in your experience, what is the difference between like setting a boundary and like creating a wall or a barrier?
I think that, so, when we talk about like boundaries, a lot of people think it means like putting rules onto other
Uh-huh.
people, right? And, I love this idea, that, like, no, a boundary is saying, like, "This is what I'm going to do," or, "This is what I'm not going to do," right? And rules are about pointing the finger at the other person. "You can't do this. You can't say this," right? Now, of course, the thing that a lot of my clients will say to me, and they're like, "Yeah, but in a relationship, like, if you set a boundary, that does impact me." And I'm like, well, yes, because you're in a relationship. That's what happens in relationships, right? So I think that the boundaries can be an ongoing conversation
Yeah.
too, because you may have a boundary in a certain relationship, and then as you go and your relationship develops, you're like, oh, I actually don't think I need that one in quite the same way, or this feels different now. And so, I reserve the right to say, hey, I wasn't okay with this before, and now I am. Or I was okay with something before, and now I'm not. And so, when I think about a lot of times we talk about orientation with regard to like attraction and sex, but I think about orientation in regards to like how you just approach anything in life. And that the boundaries kind of tell you what angle you're coming from, right? And when we communicate our boundaries to partners, then that kind of communicates, hey, this is where I'm at. This is my location around this particular topic.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like such a kind of like this thing that's hard to define or hard to figure out, and, like, most of us just don't even know what they are until we're, like, run smack dab into them, and then we're like, "Oh, I don't like that. What's going on here?" And I wonder, as you were describing the difference between, like, boundaries and rules, I was thinking, "Oh my god, that's how we're taught growing up, right? Like, you can't do that, don't do these things." Even if, like, our parent is setting a boundary, like, "You can't pull my hair," but then we get in trouble, right? Like, it is a rule, like, "You can't pull my hair or you're gonna be in trouble," and so that's how we then grow up and start doing that with our partners. Like, "This is my boundary,
Mhm.
but, like, you're gonna be in trouble, mister."
Right, right. And really, like, if boundaries are set up and communicated well, I think that it's actually an invitation to say, this is how to love me. Right?
Mm,
I'm gonna teach you how to love me, and here are my left and right lateral limits. But it really is about, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I wanna be able to love them well, and I wanna know where their edges are so that I can protect those edges, and I can be mindful of those edges and not accidentally go barreling through. I'm originally from New Jersey, right? So I have barreled through plenty of things in my life.
right.
And so it is personally helpful to me if I know where your edges are.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. How do you help people figure out, like, what their boundaries are, or how to express them?
Mm. I really love teaching people how to use their bodies,
Mhm.
right? And saying, I had a colleague of mine who is this like incredible surrogate partner, and they do this exercise with their clients where they have the client say yes to a whole bunch of things. Nothing happens, but they just feel how a yes feels to this whole list of things. And then they feel how a no feels, and like, again, nothing is happening while they're doing that. They're just practicing being asked and saying yes and no and learning, "Oh, I wanted to say no, but because I'm in this exercise, I said yes, and I felt that," right? So I felt
Uh-huh.
that. So one of the ways that I teach clients about their boundaries is to listen to that inner knowing of, "Oh, this doesn't feel good." And maybe it's not a no, never under any circumstances. Maybe it's a, this is too fast, right? So maybe there's a
Mhm.
speed issue. Maybe there's a connection issue. Yes, I would love to do that with you. And I need to feel this level of connection before I can do that,
Yeah,
right? So that's one of I think that is probably my go to with
that's
most people,
powerful.
is to teach them how to feel that in their bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so powerful. I find when I'm working with clients, so many people like troubles in non-monogamous relationships. So many of them stem from a partner saying yes when they're really a no, right? Like, they're
Mhm.
into things that they don't want to agree to because they're scared of the fallout, or they just don't feel like they can, or they aren't even sure that it's a no for them. They're just like, sure, do that thing." And they aren't aware of what that no feels like in their body, or how empowering it would feel to, like, go, "No, this is a no for me now. Let's talk about all the things around it and see what is a yes."
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so good. I love that.
Well, yay.
I love that. That is so good. And we use that same kind of thing around learning, around consent, right? Like in sexual scenarios, parties, teaching consent. We use that same kind of thing, like saying yes or no. Like, can I lick your eyeball? No.
Right.
Do you feel
Oh.
okay saying no? Like, it's fine. You didn't get in trouble. You weren't shamed for saying no to this thing you didn't want.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's so many messages about who we're supposed to be in our relationships,
Yeah.
right? And how we're supposed to show up in our relationships.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm. Yeah, and it's so weird because it feels like most people don't want those things, and yet we're all doing them. Okay.
it's so true. It is so true.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. I'm curious, are you tell me this. What is your experience with non-monogamy, or what is your relationship style? Like, what's your lens that you see all this through?
Yeah. This is always interesting for me to answer. So let me start with so I understand myself as bi in the sense that I am some of my Gen Z clients call me, a geriatric millennial. So the word pan didn't exist back then, and I fought real hard to be okay with bi. But like, my partners, I choose partners like with really all but no consideration to gender other than like, "Hey, I probably do need to know that about you at some point to be able to, like, love and respect you well." But it is like, I care about it less than their credit score and more than their eye color, maybe? I don't like, it's very low. So I wanna know if you, like, make your dog sit at home for 12 hours at a time before you let them out, right? Like, those are
Uh-huh.
the things I care about. So there's that piece over there, and then, when it comes to my orientation to relationship structures, I think, like most people, I grew up in a wildly heteronormative, household and culture and society. I grew up Catholic,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, when my parents got divorced, like my mom would not date until she got an annulment, right? Like real yes, you know. And so I think there was a lot of that. But for me, when I started like learning about different relationship structures and stuff like that, I never had like an internal, it never sounded wrong to me. I was just kind of like, "Oh, okay." Um and at the same time, like, I was an introvert and really shy, and I was kind of nerdy, and so, like, figuring out how to date one person was, like, its own thing, and these days, I'm 42 now, right? And I'm like, I have a partner who I love, and I have a business I'm running, and so, like, when I think about this, I'm like, "I don't know, can I be polysaturated with one person? Because I'm tired." And
Uh-huh.
I'm busy and feel pulled in so many directions in the best ways, but also like in this idea of if I stop and think, could I show up in a meaningful way in the like with my favorite self, right? The
Uh-huh.
self that I love to bring into my relationships. Could I do that now with another person? I'm like, if you can figure out how to stick that in my calendar, I am open to it. This and I where? Like, where is that person going, So that is my very long drawn out response to, like, what who am I? What am I? What's my
Exactly.
orientation? I think it's not monogamous and it is not practicing anything non-monogamous in a meaningful way right now because life is just
Lifing.
happening. Yes, life is just lifing, right? And it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing, but like I I want to be a good partner. I don't want to be like a bad partner, like I don't want to be like the disconnected, distracted, tired, unfulfilled, uh just kind of, bag of rocks. Like that's not who I want to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think more
So,
people
I
need to hear
think
that.
oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, polysaturated with one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people need to hear that, like, that it's all valid, and, because so many people are like, kinda treat monogamy and non-monogamy as like a light switch, like it's off or on. And I'm like, "Actually,
Mm.
like, you can just be how you feel without actively doing everything, under the sun."
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think also as I've learned, I've spent more time like in this world and working with so many poly couples. And there's something about like the relationship anarchy structure that I love. And this permission giving to not just value my romantic relationships, but also to really kind of wrap my arms around and hold dear all of these other relationships that I have. And so my life feels very full in that way, even if it's not with multiple romantic or sexual partners.
Yeah. 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 That's amazing. I've been thinking about this. Has kind of been a theme that I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple of months, is community and how stinking important it is for all of us with
Mhm.
everything happening in the world, and especially for non-monogamous folks, because most of us have mostly monogamous friends and family, and so there's a feeling of isolation, and so having community, having just knowing people that are doing things similar to you is so, like, so comforting and so helpful, and we definitely need to value, like, our friends and our just the people that are around us and where we're spending our
Mhm.
time. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Mm.
Well, I'm so glad I make sense to you. Like that's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, cool. Knowing that, I find that really helpful, knowing, like, where people are coming from, and
Mhm.
I see that you've written a lot about, like, emotional integrity, and I'm wondering how people who are non-monogamous, how can folks who are non-monogamous uphold their emotional integrity while they're navigating multiple partnerships? Like, what are the kind of the key things that come up there?
Yeah. I mean, I end up writing a lot about, I think presence is a big word that I
Ooh,
use
yeah,
all the time, right? And I think
yeah,
that, one of the relationships that I often have to remind my individuals and couple and polycule clients is about the relationship that they have with themselves, right? And that you need time to check in, right? Like, you know, how do I feel about something while I'm running from one task to the next? No, right? That's not quality time, right?
mhm,
So I think, whether that's sitting down and journaling, whether that's going for a walk, and taking time to actually be with yourself is really important and asking like, "Huh, how do I feel about this?" Or, "Oh, weird, that landed funny for me. Like, let me sit with that for a minute, And maybe I think that sometimes we're afraid to discover things about ourselves that we don't like.
mhm, yeah,
And so when we talk about emotional integrity, like we can't just be all about the happy emotions even with ourselves. It has to be like, "Oh, I don't like how I showed up in that situation. That's not okay." Not even about the other person, but like, is that okay with me how I showed up? Right? So I think that that's one way to do it is to really spend time with yourself.
Yeah.
right? And to have a deep conversation with yourself. I think again, journaling is like probably one of the more popular ways to do that, but I also think that just kind of going for a walk, being in nature. I love taking my dog for a walk down to our like mailbox, which it's about a mile and a half, like round trip, right? So it's a nice like 15-20 minute walk. And not taking headphones, right? Not
Uh-huh.
listening to a podcast, just kind of being in the moment, being present, and then kind of seeing where do my thoughts go, and how am I feeling about things right now in just kind of this really low stakes, quiet space,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. 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 It makes me think of shower thoughts, right? Like
Yes.
just hanging out in the hot water, thinking all the thoughts
Yes.
coming up.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love presence, and it makes me think of the time we need to integrate changes, right? When relationships are going through changes or just our life is going through changes, having the time and space to let it anchor in or settle in or just process. You have to be present with that instead of like going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next.
Yes. As you're saying this, I'm thinking about a session that I had earlier this week where the person had emailed me and was like, "Hey, I want to come in and talk to you about like working through some stuff with, E&M and I was like, "Yeah, absolutely fine." So they come in, we can sit down, we start talking. And so I'm like, "Okay, so tell me a little bit about this." Well, my partner's going out on a date tonight. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, so typically we would like to have that conversation sooner, right? Like, and give you some time. Um, okay, well, we're gonna introduce the concept of an emotional safety plan a little bit earlier than I normally do, but like here we go, And so we ended up doing that. But as you're saying this, I'm like, yes, yes, please take some time when
Um,
you're implementing relationship changes.
yes.
Give
Yes.
your therapist some time too.
Uh-huh. 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 You mentioned an emotional safety plan. I'm curious, what does that look like? Like, what does that look like for you? Like,
Ooh.
how do you frame that?
Yeah. So I think about it as, whenever I'm talking to whether it's a couple or an individual who comes to me and is like trying to wrap their heads around wanting to wanting to do this. And I think, consent is so important. So like even if the people are like, I am mentally on board, right? And then
Mhm.
it's like, but I am practically freaking out. Right.
Uh-huh.
And so I try to frame it as in, especially when somebody has, a nesting partner or an anchor partner, or they've built a life with somebody. Um, and then they're trying to kind of open up. I'm like, okay. So one is, how will your partner exploring this? How will you exploring this benefit the relationship that you have with each other? Right.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think centering that concept, then we build the emotional safety plan out. So it's like, okay, so, one of the things I talk to people about is that while intimacy needs connection and knowing, right? Desire and passion need mystery and they need space. And I
Mhm.
always kind of talk about like, we like unwrapping presents, right? And we like the mystery and we like the anticipation of discovering somebody. And so I think when people go out and they, even if somebody goes on a solo trip, right? And then they come back, well, you don't know what they did, and
Mhm.
then you get to sit down and you get to connect with them and learn. And so I think that sometimes I just frame it as in like, hey, your partner's going to go out and have this experience and they're going to come back and there's going to be something to discover. Right. And so isn't that lovely? And so usually people kind of go like, oh, okay. All right. That's good. I like that. Right. And then we kind of talk about the more practical steps. And it's like, okay, so what are you going to do? You know, um, so that you have something to talk about. Like, because, you know, you could sit on the couch and be miserable and think about all the different ways that somebody is, you know, doing everything better than you, right? Because
Right.
everybody, like, kind of catastrophizes. There's this person, they are a 10 in every way.
Right.
They are particularly a 10 in every way that I suck, right? Like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
it's negative self-talk plus, like, the worst fantasy ever kind of crashing together. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great way to make sure you have a miserable night, right? So,
In the
like,
backyard crying.
right, right. So, like, maybe I mean, you can do that, like, and people I even give people the option of doing them, like, "Listen, sometimes people just need to do that once, so
The
you can
damn
believe me
break.
when I say" Right, right, like, just check that off the list. But, you know, what are you gonna do, right? So, are you do you have an opportunity to do something that, like, your partner doesn't really love to do when they're home, you know? Or do you have the opportunity to connect with somebody else, like a friend or someone that, life is busy, and so you may not get the opportunity to sit on a FaceTime and hang out or something like that, right? Just any of your various forms of self-care. The one that I really like, though, is if I have somebody I've been working with for a little while and we know that one of the pain points for them has to do with a younger part. Like, I do a lot of parts work with my clients and talking about, an inner child or somebody, like, who's afraid right now? Like, what's the fear? Well, the fear is that my partner's not gonna love me anymore, they're not gonna come home, they're not gonna no. Okay. So, how would you talk to a kid, right, if they were scared? Right. And, like, what would you try to do? You would try to reassure them. Maybe your partner needs to reassure them. I am coming home. I do love you. What do we need? Um, and then also thinking about, if this is really important because actually part of the healing is your partner leaving and then
Uh-huh.
coming back, right? Like, that's actually the healing. There isn't a shortcut for that.
Mhm.
And so we're gonna walk through this, and it might be scary and it might be uncomfortable, but the pain isn't without a purpose,
Yeah.
right? The discomfort isn't without a purpose. You know, if you pitch a fit, um, and sometimes that happens, but, like, if you pitch a fit and you recall your partner early from a date or something, they may have some feelings about that. And, like, I think that you can work through it. But one of the things is that that little part doesn't get to have the return, the autonomous return home. And
Mhm.
so that deeper healing work doesn't get to happen that time, maybe next time.
Yeah.
Right. And so we just kind of go through that. So we do that. We talk about, what would you like your partner to do when they come home? You
Mm.
know, because people have varying ideas, right? Shower, no shower, sleep in the same bed, don't sleep in the same bed, curfew. I don't like that word, but is there a certain time that the person's going to be home? Are they going to text on the way home because there's a safety concern? Like, I used to practice in Washington D.C., right? So it was completely reasonable that if your partner's not home at 3 a.m., you're like, "Are you having
What's
a good
wrong?
time? Did something go wrong? Like, what's happening?" And so we'll talk about that. And, like, the first time that this happens for somebody when they're gonna go out and do this, and we put this emotional safety plan in place, one of my mentors taught me this, and I think it's amazing, and I usually ask if the partner can come in, and
Yeah.
I say, "What time do you think you're gonna be home?" Right?
Uh-huh.
And please, to the absolute best of your ability, this first time, I need you in the door, like, the minute that you said you were gonna be home,
Yeah.
right? Like, please do that. I understand I may be like cutting off, I'm going to be asking you to cut something short or whatever, because, sometimes you don't know how the night's going to go. And everything will, if that doesn't happen, everything will be harder
Yes.
going forward. So, like, can you please just give me this one time? I understand. I was born 2 days late. I rarely show up on time. Okay. Like, I get it. But oh my God, please, this one time, can you please make sure that you are home when you say that you're going to be home? You
Yeah.
know? And so that's usually for my newbies. And then they're like, all right, lady, okay.
It just sets the foundation of like, oh, I can trust this.
Yeah, it really does. Especially for, right? Like new things are scary because they're new.
Yeah. 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 Which goes back to what we were talking about earlier with boundaries and like not saying yes if you mean no. So if you're asking them for a time, don't give a time that you really don't want to be home at.
Right.
Right? Like give a time that like actually makes sense.
Right. Yes.
Sure. So
Yeah.
that you
I
can
mean,
then be home on time.
absolutely. I mean, I would rather somebody say, I'm going to be home at 3 a.m. and come home at midnight.
Yeah.
Right. Than
Yeah.
say, I'm going to be home at midnight and come in at 12:05.
Yeah. Yeah. Like then that expectation isn't blown up. And then you're like,
Right.
I knew it. I knew it. Everything is going to fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And over time, I think people get more comfortable, right? Like we want to set
Yeah.
ourselves up for success.
Yeah.
So doing that low hanging fruit, like let's try to give ourselves something good to go off of, something good to build off of. And then, I mean, then 6 months down the road, a year down the road, like whatever it ends up being, people are like, oh, I don't even need to do that anymore. Well, great. But you might have needed to do that in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
As you're talking about that, it's funny. I'm thinking about how, especially when people are first opening up, these first experiences, the one that's going out on a date is like, I think there's this like fear or this like, gotta grab everything I can right now because it might get taken away from me or the rug might be pulled out from under me. And so they're on this like, I'm excited, I gotta try all the things,
Mhm.
which make it like, no, I don't want to come home at midnight. I'm doing something cool, new, and fun. But like I would just wanna remind them that actually you're creating this, like, base of safety in your home life, in your relationship that you clearly care about,
Yeah.
and the fun is still gonna be there, you still get to have it.
Yes, yes, and most of my couples, when I'm working with them and they're opening up, I'll say, "We're gonna do this, right? You're gonna do this. We're gonna have the conversations, and if it doesn't go right, I'm gonna ask you to promise each other that it doesn't immediately get shut down, right? Because it's not fair to tell somebody that we're gonna try something new, but you're not allowed to make any mistakes."
Yeah.
Right? So, if it's a complete and utter disaster or if it's the best night ever, like, at least wait until you come back in and then we can have a conversation,
Yeah.
right? But, like, let's not ripping rugs out from under one another is just, like, not good for relationships writ large.
At all.
Right.
Not at all.
Yeah.
At all. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. I wonder how it if people feel like exploring non-monogamy is like stretching their nervous system too far. How do you what do you recommend to them? How do you support them in that?
Mm. Um, Let me see if I understand the question. Can you say it again?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If they're, they're exploring, they're trying something new and they're just, you know, constantly activated, scared, worried, and it feels like too much or like they're
Mhm.
just it's like, "Oh my god, we gotta shut this down because it's too much or it's too scary." How do you how do you help them temper that?
Well, I think the first thing is to really give that person, especially that part of that person, the space that it needs to feel heard and expressed and, um, respected is not the same as agreed with, right?
Mm.
Yeah, like, let's understand, and so it's balancing that, trying to get the other partner to be like, okay, we're going to be in receive mode. right? And like, we're going to try to regulate your nervous system so you don't go defensive. And it's usually a very slow conversation that it requires some like, okay, hang on, let's get recentered, let's get regrounded, um, and kind of stepping in to that like slowly, one step at a time. Okay, tell me what's going on. What are you feeling? Where is this coming from? Does this remind you of something from before? And a lot of times it's like, yeah, it's tied to this other thing. And then, you know, and so then a lot of times I'm like, do you have your own therapist? Right? Like, because, because that part
Mhm.
deserves to have the space and the care and the nurturance that it needs. And we're balancing, when I'm a couples therapist, right? Individual therapy is one thing because I'm just aligned with that person. But when I'm working with a couple, I really am holding space for that relationship. And so I can't just be like, yep, nope, non-monogamy's off the table. Sorry, partner two. Like,
Mhm.
here it is. For me, it's really about giving space for that, for that uh, pain to be heard and respected. And then uh, to revisit it, right? And say, okay, so is this really about the concept itself? Is this really about who the person was that they went out on a date with? Is there something there? Is this so like, is it like a philosophical values level
Mhm.
problem? Is it a circumstantial, I don't like this person or this person doesn't feel safe to me? Um, is there, you know, a lot of times I'll get people who come in who have not done a relationship agreement in any meaningful way. And so there's just so much ambiguity.
Yeah.
And it's just well, I'm afraid of everything because I don't even know what's allowed or what's not allowed. And I'm like, oh, well, there's your problem, right?
Start there.
Right, right. So, and I think people are so surprised when I have them do a relationship agreement and when we actually walk through it and they're like, lady, like, what are you at? What do you mean? Is it okay for me to fantasize about another person when I'm taking a walk with the dog? I'm like,
Right.
I mean, is
Tell
it?
me.
And they're like, I don't know. Like, and but we just pull everything out on the table, right?
Yeah.
Like we're gonna talk about all of it so that you know exactly what this means. Because that's the last thing that we want is for you to be using one definition and for me to be using another.
Mhm. 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 Yep. Relationship agreements. In a relationship agreement that you help people create, are there, like, some main points that have to be hit?
Yeah, I mean, so I think for some of them, I'll start off with the like, flirting, um, pet names, you know, fantasy, and then we'll get into like, I like helping people say, okay, when are we going to be, if we're in our home, if you live together, right? Every time you look over at your partner and they're on their phone, I promise you don't want to be thinking about, oh, who are they texting? Right? Like,
Uh-huh.
so like, are there some, tell me about that. Um, how do you feel about people texting in your bedroom
Yeah.
or not? Right? How do you feel about if you have kids? What do you think about that? You know, what are we telling them? What are we not telling them? Who's mommy going out with? Right? Like, is that a friend? Is that a, you know, what did my mom used to say? A special friend?
Uh-huh.
Right?
It's mommy's special friend.
Yes, it's a special friend. So, like, okay. Or somebody else, right? So I think that that's one. You actually, when I was listening to one of the episodes of your podcast, you had a great one, which was, frequency of like, if we
Oh,
go out to a party, right?
yeah.
Because right now, I mean, most of the time I'm talking about people going out separately, but there are people who go out together,
Yeah.
right? And are we going to play together? Are we going to play separately? What happens if we have an agreement to play together, but somebody that is only interested in one of us, right?
Yeah.
Like, what happens? Um, any agreement that we come to, is that for this time or is that for forever and always? Right?
Hmm.
Like, I mean, we can get, I mean, I get granular down to
Yeah.
specific acts if people want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, because I think, and then there's also this other thing of like, what is going to be held in reserve, right?
Mm,
Because a lot of times, like historically, we think about exclusive relationships, and
right.
typically, and Esther Perel talks about this in her book, State of Affairs, it was that people were sexually exclusive. Well, if we are going to put sex and romance back on the table for not being exclusive, is there something else that is meaningful to the two of you that we can hold in reserve and say, yes, but this is for us, right?
mm,
And sometimes people forget about that,
yeah.
you know? Maybe somebody else doesn't get to go with your partner to the hotel that you go every year for your anniversary. Like
Mm,
maybe that's, it's like, can that just be ours? Right?
yeah. 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 I love that. I really love that because a lot of people, when they're opening up, they start really small, right? Like, especially, I know a lot of swingers, like starting to swing or be like, yeah, but no kissing. And I'm like, how is kissing more intimate than putting your genitals in my mouth?
Yeah.
Right? But then it starts expanding. Okay, well, then just like no holding hands with people or no anal or whatever, right? And it's like, well, these are just things probably that people want to do. So maybe make it more something that is actually unique to your relationship rather than
Mhm.
something that most people engaging in intimate things are doing.
Right. 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 Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and really kind of like broadening, if we're going to broaden the playbook of what's accessible to us, then let's really broaden it and say that whatever is, intimate and sacred about our relationship is not confined to the bedroom anymore because that was
Yeah.
the old script,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So good. So good. There's a million ways that can go. Mm.
There are.
Amazing.
It's so good. I mean, I just love this work so much, and
Mm.
truly working with poly couples and ethically non-monogamous couples has actually made me a better therapist for working with monogamous couples
Yes.
because I mean, one of my favorite resources to give my monogamous couples is actually the book Polysecure.
Yes. I say that all the time, like, everybody should read that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
because one is that it has I think one of the best adult attachment style explanations that I've ever
100%.
heard,
Mhm.
right? And then also I think that like she just kind of talks about, relationships, and even if you're not having sex with more than one partner, you probably have other people in your life who are important to you and who deserve your time and care and attention, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And like, can we have some language around that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I say that all the time. Like, even monogamous people should read this. It's just good relationship advice.
It really is. It really, really is, and it gets rid of, I mean, any assumption that you have about what needs to be talked about in a relationship. Like, I think that, just the structure of a poly relationship, it just, like, burns it down. It's like, there can't be any assumptions. We have to talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. If you could rewrite one, like, cultural social rule about relationships, what would you replace it with?
Mm, I only have one? But
There's so many.
okay. I know. I have many thoughts. Um, okay, I'll do the one that I don't know that a lot of other people would talk about. I would rewrite jealousy as a bad emotion. I think we need to rebrand jealousy as it's actually one of my favorite emotions,
Yeah,
to
same.
as a therapist, right? I'm just like, "Oh, you're jealous? I have so much to work with." Like, if you come in with jealousy, I have a whole toolbox,
Yeah.
um, right? So, I think that's the one because I think that, the script right now is I'm not allowed to be jealous. Jealous means I'm bad.
Mhm.
Jealous means even in the, like some of the, you know, the poly world, I think, and non-monogamy world, there's this idea that like compersion is the gold standard,
Mhm.
right? Which I'm convinced that like there's 6 people who experience that.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not me.
I think I've met 1. I met 1 so far. I don't know where the other 5 are. Uh, so but, like, I think that we but like, the mythos is that if you are enlightened, right? If you have done your work, then,
Right.
like, compersion is the gold standard, and, like, jealousy is the ugly stepsister who gets locked in the basement and, and we don't wanna talk about her. We don't want to acknowledge her because that's a you problem, and it's like, but no, 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 no. Jealousy, you know, so many people have a hard time articulating what they want because they don't even know what's possible,
Yeah.
right? And so if you are jealous about something, ooh, I mean, that is part of you going like, well, but I want that.
Mhm.
Oh, well, isn't that good information?
Yep. Yep.
Right? And
Yep.
so it is, like, one of my favorites. It is one of my favorite emotions now.
Same.
Mhm.
Same. You're speaking my language there. Actually, I have a keynote talk that is getting turned on by jealousy.
Ooh.
Because it's so first of all, just such a human freaking emotion, right?
Mhm.
But there's so many things underneath it, and all of the things that happen in our body are the same things that happen in our body when we're turned on, and it's all about the
Oh.
story that you're applying to the sensations you're experiencing.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
now I need to go to this talk, so please let us know where we can get tickets. Um,
Yeah, it's good
yeah.
stuff. Good stuff.
Oh, that's
I love
so
it.
good.
I
Is
love it. I have always been a very jealous person, and that has been the bulk of my personal work, being non-monogamous in my life, really. I love it. Mhm.
I understand. I know I understand that so much, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's fantastic. So does that have to do with, um like, the relationship between anxiety and excitement? Like, is that
I think
related to
so.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's very much, when it hit me that, like, every time I was really just, like, gut churning, jealous, insecure, anxious, I was also, like, real tingly, and when I
Mhm.
noticed it, I was like, "Oh, there's, like if I had a different story going, I would be really excited right now. I'd be, like, revving to go.
Mm.
Like, "Alright, let's do the thing." But instead, I have this story that, like, I'm about to be abandoned and rejected, and I'm terrible and the worst, and everybody's more beautiful and funny than me and gives better blowjobs and right, like, all of these things, and I'm like, "But also, if that weren't what I was thinking, hmm."
Mhm. That is fascinating. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
Well, oh my goodness. I don't know if you
um,
have a TED Talk, but you need one now.
not yet, but I'm working on it. How can people find you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram, so it's, Emma Smith PhD, And I also have a Substack, which is emmasmithphd.substack.com. I always mess that up, but I think I got it right. That one is called it's my really it's kind of like more of my philosophical writing about intimacy and presence and
Mm.
relationships and kind of doing that deeper dive because I'm a nerd and I love it. And so I do that. And then, for therapy, like if people are in Tennessee or well, I'm licensed in DC, Maryland, Virginia, Texas, and Tennessee. So if they're in any of those states, and they want to
Around.
work with me, then I'm in private practice and my practice is called Soliloquy. So I can provide the link for that. So yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. I'll put it all in the show notes so people can find it. I have one more question for you, and this goes on our Patreon at patreon.com/notmonogamous for our supporters. The segment's just the tip, and it is what is a favorite or best sex tip that you would give? I love that. From one Scorpio to another. That is probably my favorite tip that we've gotten.
Oh,
Yeah.
yay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So
That's
good.
awesome.
So good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been fantastic.
Oh, it's been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Of course. Wow. How incredible is Dr. Emma? I'm genuinely still buzzing from this conversation. I only just met her, but her work feels really aligned with mine. And that was like talking to an old friend who just kind of gets it. From, body-based boundaries, emotional safety plans to that really beautiful reframe on jealousy. This episode was so full of nuggets. I imagine you'll probably come back to it a few times. If this resonated with you, share it with someone else who's like navigating all of this beautiful chaos of non-monogamy or someone who just loves good relationship wisdom. And if you want to hear more from Dr. Emma, don't miss her really juicy Just the Tip bonus segment over on Patreon at patreon.com/notmonogamous. She shared a really great practice for getting in touch with your sexiest self before you get anywhere near the bedroom. And it's probably one of my favorite tips that we've had so far. You can get that and support the show by heading over to Patreon, becoming one of our lovers or friends with benefits. And every subscriber keeps us creating more and more content and spreading the love around, right? Make sure that you hit the subscribe button wherever you're at and leave a comment or a review. Share this with a friend. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.